Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Wine, Women, and Words. Joining us, as always, is Michelle.
Hello.
And our special guest tonight is Gwendolyn Womack, the author of our June book of the month, The Time Collector. So thank you so much for joining us.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
So we'll get to Michelle here in a moment because she's not joining in with the cool kids and drinking. She's got a story to tell us. She has had quite the day. But Gwendolyn, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking a Sterling Cab. So.
Oh. Mm-hmm. And Michelle, how about? Oh, actually, that's right, Michelle. You're not drinking.
I'm not drinking tonight. No, I wish I was.
You should be.
Oh, hold on! I just remembered I have something.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, I'm drinking a rosé because it's summertime in Los Angeles, and I think that's the official drink of Los Angeles during the summertime.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So now we'll wait for Michelle to take her time and get what she's going to drink.
Oh, I'm so excited. I totally forgot that I went out and bought a 6-pack of one of those sparkling seltzers, the hard seltzer.
Oh, okay.
I still have a couple left. Oh, I wish I had remembered this like 3 hours ago.
So what happened 3 hours ago? Is it the story that I think it is? The one that you were telling me earlier?
Not all of it, but
okay.
Such a nice sound. So I'm in the Midwest, and I have lived here 3 years, and not once have I seen a tick. Actually, not once in my life have I seen a tick, except the gross enlarged pictures that they show on the internet. And all of a sudden, my daughter had friends over, and they're up in her room, and all of a sudden I hear one of them yell, "I found a tick!"
Oh, no.
And I get up, and I was sitting in my room, and I get up, I'm like, it's not a tick. It's not a tick. And I walk in, and sure enough, there's a tick crawling on the carpet in my daughter's room. So obviously we have to burn the house down now. And and insects are my, ants have been my greatest foe for years. But I think I've banished them from the house. Knock on wood. But ticks are a whole other story. So I vacuum upstairs, I vacuum down, so I take her blankets off her bed, throw them in the wash, kick the kids out, go to the pet store, and I buy spray, tick spray that you can spray on your carpet and your furniture to kill anything that's in it. So I spray it all, and I realize afterwards that I'm reading the labels that you probably should do before you spray, and it says harmful if absorbed through the skin. And I'm barefoot spraying this stuff all over the ground that I'm then walking over. So I call poison control because I'm paranoid. I'm like, did I just poison myself with this crap to kill ticks? And then I get paranoid that I poisoned my family inadvertently because they're walking around barefoot, but they were outside while I was spraying, and I had all the windows open. And it's moral of the story, everyone's fine. No one is poisoned. It was just my paranoid mind. But oh, it was so stressful. I carried them upstairs to bed, and I wouldn't let them walk on the carpet. I'm like, no, guys, just stand in the bathroom. I'm going to take you guys one at a time to bed, and don't get out of bed. Oh. This sip right now has been much deserved.
Yeah, she was telling me the story earlier, and I was like, well, I suppose it's not worse than having Lyme disease. I mean, so you're at least protecting kids from that.
Right.
And I mean, it is better than burning down the house, which is a totally viable option.
Oh my, and it's, gross. But I guess apparently tick season is super bad this year. And my neighbor her son had a tick on him, bit him, attached to him, had to pull it out with tweezers.
Yeah. I remember when
Ooh.
I was a kid, I was terrified of ticks. That was the one bug I was terrified of. Yeah.
Same here. It was like they were around. I grew up in upstate New York, so it was like one of those. It was like those little they were like little vampires.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, my friend would be like, "Oh yeah, I just gotta get them with the dog from the dog, and you have to really dig your nail into them to kill them because they don't
Gross.
die easily." Yeah, so let's talk about happier things like this
Yeah.
book. And enough about the ticks.
Well, my girlfriend was like, okay, I Googled it, and it's not like if there's one, there's like millions of them that you don't see. It's more like a one at a time kind of thing.
Right.
All right. Hopefully that just like fell off of a child that came into my house, and I got it, and I froze him to death in the freezer in a little Ziploc bag, so I can be like, ha ha. My
Wow.
little
Okay.
sadistic self. Bugs should not enter my house. If you are a bug and you come into my house, you will die a slow and agonizing death.
And this
I
is
will
the
enjoy
moment
it.
where we discover that Michelle's actually a mafia dom, and so anyways, the book. Michelle, you have questions about the book?
I do. I started making a list like
Okay.
weeks ago.
Okay.
Because we both finished this book in like a week, right?
I think so, yeah.
Because
Yeah,
I
it was
started like maybe June 1st or 2nd, and it was practically done the day that I went to see Hamilton, and that was June 8th. So about a week.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I finished it just before you finished it. And I'm sorry, hold on.
I hear a squeaky toy.
Yes, my dog is obsessed with this taco, and it's, yeah.
That's cute.
And now she's going to be throwing a temper tantrum because I took it away. So anyways, Michelle, your first question?
Okay, well, this is basically one that I've been dying to ask you since we started reading it. So we first get into, and I always want to call her Maleficent, but I know that's not her name.
Right.
But she has, and I can't remember his name. She found the pen. That was one of the first items that she found. So my question is, if you could hold anyone's pen and get their story, whose pen would you want to hold?
Oh, that's a great question. My gosh. Oh my gosh. Wow. Whose pen?
You stumped her
Diana,
right
you
at the first
too.
bet. Oh, whose pen?
Yeah.
Oh, that's easy for me.
Really? Who?
Zelda Fitzgerald. That would
that'd
be
be a
some
good
fun
one.
memories.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I don't know. Too many choices. I mean, whose pen would I just to be there while they wrote the story?
Uh-huh.
Mm.
Like all of them, I suppose. I think that's the right answer for
Everyone.
that. All the pens.
Yeah, all the pens. I'm a pen collector, by the way. That's one of the only things I collect is pens. So, pens and kaleidoscopes.
Oh,
But,
neat. I see all the kaleidoscope pictures on social media.
Yeah, it's my hobby. I love taking pictures of kaleidoscopes just to kind of relax. And then I get my son to do it with me. So, he gets into it. It's fun.
They're very zen. I always like looking at the pictures. They're quite zen.
Yeah, they are. They're really, yeah. I love taking them, So, yeah. I will get back to the pen question.
We'll let you think on it for a little bit. Yeah, we'll give you some other questions.
I should have started off with an easier one.
Yeah, you should have emailed me that.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no warm-ups for you.
I know.
We're just going to dive straight into it.
Here. Okay.
Yeah, let her have some more wine, Michelle. Let that, yeah.
Okay.
So for this book, I mean, it's such an interesting premise. What gave you the idea for it?
I actually came up with this idea when I was finishing The Memory Painter. And one of my favorite scenes in The Memory Painter that I wrote was the scene where Brian goes to visit his parents, and he's his mother's just come back from antique shopping, and she's found this old clock. And for people who've never read The Memory Painter, it's my first book. It deals with reincarnation, and the main character can remember his past lives. And his mother has this really this knack of finding objects that belong to him in other lifetimes. So he's come to visit his parents, and she has just come back from the flea market where she's found this old clock that unknowingly he built. And he is so filled with emotion by seeing it. He, the clock doesn't work. He's trying to hide how he's feeling from his mother. And so he says, well, let me take the clock. I'll see if I can fix it. And so he can barely make it to the car, and he's sitting there in the car holding the clock, and he's just filled with so much emotion. And there was just this, I loved writing that scene because there's this poignancy about it, like the memories that are yours, but they'll never be yours again. And the sense of the distance of time. And then I was thinking, well, what if there's somebody who could actually see and experience all those memories too, but it had nothing to do with past lives whatsoever. It was just that was their ability, was to grab the memories within objects. And then all of a sudden Rowan like kind of airdropped into my brain like right then. And I saw that first scene where he's in the antique store taking off his gloves to touch something. I was so excited. It was really the same sensation of when I had seen Brian painting in his studio late at night speaking Greek. It was that exact same feeling. I was like, oh my gosh, I have a book. I was like, I have a character to write. And I almost actually abandoned the fortune teller to write it because I was so excited. Yeah, I was so excited by the story, but I was really knee deep in the research and fleshing out the fortune teller that I just was like, this will be my third book, no question. And it'll give me time to kind of squirrel away all the research, get the story kind of mulling in my brain. But I knew what I wanted to do. And that was a great feeling, actually, already having that in the back of my mind as I was finishing the fortune teller. But it really came from The Memory Painter. So.
Oh, neat. And if you haven't read The Memory Painter, guys, you need to get it like as soon as this podcast is over. I highly recommend it. It's such a great book.
Thank you.
I know Michelle really enjoyed it as well. You're still on mute, Michelle.
Sorry.
We're professionals here.
Oh my God. And today with my emails and like, oh, I'm ready for the test run, except I'm 2 hours ahead of you. I'm not 2 hours behind you. It's an indication. No, I'm always, when I wear my headphones, I get self-conscious that you can hear me swallow my drink. So I always mute myself whenever I'm taking a sip of my beverage. But I forgot.
All right, no speaking.
But I love, so we were talking about, or I was thinking about, each of your books kind of has an object that represents it, but this one had, I feel like it had several. It had the key, obviously, which was the main reason that Rowan got involved, and Stuart, and all of the psychometrists.
Psychometrists, yeah.
But also crop circles start cropping up.
So be here all week, folks.
All week. How did you find the way to tie crop circles into it? Because I thought that was really interesting.
Thank you. So crop circles was not even on my radar when I first started writing the book. When I wrote the story, I had like a general 4-page kind of outline. It wasn't even an outline. It's the general scope of the story, but towards the end, it's like, and then the ooh parts, which are out of place artifacts, which is what. Maybe I'll do a little quick summary about what the book's about, but basically I didn't have an answer to how everything was coming together. And I started thinking, these out of place artifacts, it all has to tie into geometry. And so I started Googling sacred geometry. And after I had read a key book for me on my research was Descartes' Notebook, which had been a little book sitting on my shelf forever. I gotten it at a used bookstore years ago. kind of felt called to buy it, didn't know why, and it had just sat there. And when I started trying to figure out the pieces of the puzzle of how all of these artifacts are fitting together, I was like, the answer is math. The answer is geometry. And I was like, oh my gosh, Descartes' Notebook. I got to read this book. And I read the book. I kind of stopped writing. I got Descartes' Notebook. I read it. And that became really pivotal to the story. And then I started Googling sacred geometry. And then crop circles kept popping up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, am I going to go down this rabbit hole of going into crop circles? I really hesitated because that could be a book on its own. And here I was, folding it in. And then I was like, I'm going for it, like, well, I got to do it. And actually it became really one of the most fascinating things I researched on the book. And one of the funnest surprises I had was just discovering that crop circles are alive and well and pretty phenomenal and amazing. And as a kaleidoscope collector, where that's my love anyway, is all this geometry and beautiful, creations, to see that on fields, it was neat. It was wonderful, a discovery in the book research, which is why I love kind of going off and peeling back, like the research, like where is it going to lead me? Sometimes you just don't know. So yeah, it was a little bit of a leap of faith, like, okay, I'm going to put it in. So yeah.
Now
yeah. Oh, sorry, you go.
Okay. So you do there's lots of little bits of history in here. We've got the story of the key, what happened in Prague, that poor man.
Yeah.
Which I think on air we discovered that was a real story.
Yeah.
Michelle went and looked it up.
I was Googling it while we were talking.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And then there was the pen, and then we have the music box and, other little things, in Native American artifacts. Talk to us a little bit about the research, because it seems like you did lots of research that got put into like a half a chapter or a full chapter.
Yeah.
Throughout the book.
I do a lot of research, and I really try and put as much real history and real moments into the stories. I just love doing that. That's just something I love to do. I actually, on my website, you can click on the Time Collector. If you scroll all the way down, there's a selected bibliography page. Everything is there. So I'm really good about trying to keep track of all the books and articles and documentaries and everything that I'm doing along the way. I keep a sheet, and then I give it to my web manager at the end of the day. I'm like, can you please create this page? And she links it to Goodreads and IMDb and YouTube and all the places. So, and I try to organize it by like psychometry, New Orleans, crop circles, I just all of it, the lifetimes, like what I read for Korea and, all of it. So if readers are interested in really seeing one aspect, they can go on that page and scroll down and find it. And
I love it.
Yeah. So it's all there.
Okay, Michelle, you can go with your question now.
Oh, mine actually wasn't a question, but I just had to tell you that this book really inspired a lot of arts and crafts in this house.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
My kids and I made our own snow globes one day. And I wish I could find Lily has hers upstairs. Where is Landon's? Landon's has little Lego dudes in it, and Lily has an LOL doll glued to the bottom, and mine has keys. But we did discover no one on all the tutorials that I looked at for making snow globes, no one says be careful with how much glitter you put in. Because we put in so much glitter that you can't actually see what's in it. It's just like a snowstorm of glitter.
I love that. That's awesome.
And we're actually collecting paper towel rolls to do kaleidoscopes next, because I saw the posts on your Facebook page of the kaleidoscope.
Well,
pictures.
Tag me on something. I'll share it. I'd love to see it. I mean, it's on my to-do list to do a homemade kaleidoscope. So yeah, I would love to make one too.
I almost have all the supplies. I just need, one more Michael's run, and then I come home with supplies for like 50 other projects that I don't really need to do.
Right.
Isn't
That's
that the way
great.
it goes when you go into Michael's, where
Yeah.
you go in for one thing and then you get that one thing, but then you end up having all these other things that you want to make too?
Mm-hmm.
They're like oop parts. They're like things that you don't really need, but you come home with them anyway. How did they get here?
I've had to ban myself from Michael's because my closet is about 75% yarn.
Oh, really?
Yes, I'm a knitter, and you can tell a knitter by how much yarn they have stored. And I have so much yarn that it's more yarn than like office stuff, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I don't need any more yarn. I have to use it up, a lot of it up, before I can buy more. So that means no Michaels, because I know I'm going to walk straight back to the yard and just like, oh, pretty color, pretty texture. I'm going to do something with this someday. I don't know when, but it's going to happen.
So, but yeah, I tried to make my snow globe something literary, but I was running out of babysitting time and I had to get home. So I just grabbed some keys and it didn't quite work out. But the kids turned out cute.
That's cool.
But so going back to the story,
Yeah.
there are a lot of characters. It's kind of an ensemble cast, and everyone plays a really crucial role. There's no one that's really superfluous. Every character plays a part in Rowan's journey. But I think one of my favorites was actually his mother, Jocelyn, because she's kind of, she knows it's there and she knows it exists, but she's not really on board with it. She's kind of holds herself back. But I just loved her story and how you find out what happened with Rowan's parents and how his gift ultimately kind of tore them apart.
Right.
But when you started writing, did you know that you were going to have this huge ensemble cast, or did they just kind of create themselves?
The mother character, I really saw pretty right away. I knew that the mother was a master historian because of him, and I knew she was in Oxford. I wanted her to kind of be like almost his equal without the gift. She worked so hard just to keep up with him, to help him. And so she was a really strong character in my head coming in. And actually it was a question of how much of a part would she play. And then because obviously it's a love story between Rowan and Millicent. And so yeah, Millicent as brother, he came on a little later. I mean, I would say the mother was the second character I really got after Rowan, and then came Millicent, and then the brother. So it was just kind of, they all kind of, it kind of was organic. It really kind of all came together as I was writing it. I didn't really struggle so much with the characters. They really kind of presented themselves. So
it's very nice of them.
Yeah, it was. I mean, looking back, yeah, it was a little different process than, I don't know. It just wasn't. I mean, I'm sure at the time, yeah, I was probably, I mean, every book's a struggle, but looking back, it just didn't seem as painful as, as we say, the fortune teller.
I need someone to do this.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because as authors, sometimes it's almost like we're crazy people, because it's like the characters have to talk to us and they open up to us, and if you have a shy character, it's hard to get that into their head and write their story. So unless you're talking to other authors or other writers in general about this, people are going to look at you like you're nuts.
Right.
It's like the imaginary person you're making up isn't telling you what they want to do. No, you don't understand.
Exactly. They talk to me. We are friends. We have a working relationship. No, I do not belong in the loony bin, I swear. Now, the location is very important to this. Which, by the way, speaking of characters, this is going to be no shock to Michelle. Besides Rowan, I really like Stuart. Poor Stuart. Let's take a moment with that.
Yeah. Yeah, poor Stuart. Yeah, he's struggling and needs Rowan's help. And
It's almost like there were two sides to the same coin.
right.
I felt like
Stuart was the extroverted psychometrist who went into intuitive archaeology, and he really tried to make a career in a different way out of his gift, you know, and then obviously his own personal tragedies and things, you know, influenced him. The whole point was, you know, Rowan was the loner, and he never wanted to be involved with anybody, you know, in that group. Stuart had the group. He's very extroverted. I liked their friendship a lot. I actually, for people who haven't read the book yet, they became friends through mountain climbing because, you know, psychometry, all of it's done through your hands. And so they would, you know, find release through bouldering on mountains with, you know, bare hands on the rocks. And that was their friendship. And, you know, I actually cut kind of a couple of scenes of them mountain climbing together, you know, just there, you know, you make decisions of, you know, the balance of, are we going to go off on too much of a tangent or not? You know what I mean? So I had to make some of those decisions of trimming back the mountain climbing, you know, trimming back a little bit of the parent story. You know, it was kind of creeping in too much to the main drive. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed their friendship and having it, you know, writing that. So,
yeah, I love the friendship too. And I love, you know, the Stuart's character because it shows that, I mean, he had the method to his madness or the motives to his madness where, you know, it really showed and exemplified where pain can take somebody if it's left unchecked.
Right.
And so it was quite, I adored his character. And of course, Michelle's not surprised because I love the villains. So.
Well, Rowan definitely, we have a list of fictional boyfriends that that we adore. And I think like 5 pages in, we were both texting each other going, oh my God, Rowan is a new fictional boyfriend. He's on the list.
Yes, he's on the list.
Yeah.
But just speaking of 2 things that I thought were brilliant, that I loved the way that you created this whole scene, the flowers, Rowan's security system. I thought that was genius. How you created that.
Thanks. I actually read that. I read that with psychometry, that flowers hold imprints, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's fascinating. I definitely have to make that be a plot point and put it in. So yeah.
That's so cool.
I know. I thought it was too. I was like, that's amazing. Yeah.
So wait. I'm just, call me slow. Go ahead and call me slow. So the psychometry is actually a thing?
Yes, I did not make this up. So psychometry it's a psychic ability, and it's the ability to read the memories within objects. And that's kind of like a sensory imprint. And it's the whole idea when I was researching psychometry and psychometrists. I mean, it's a real close cousin to just being a psychic. Psychics use their hands. They, you know, say a psychic who works for the police, they need to touch keys, jewelry, a wallet, something that's very personal to the person. It was worn on their body. It has their energy. So when you get like down to kind of more of a, you know, a different way of looking at it, it's all about energy imprints, and memories are within those imprints. And so psychics are able to pick up on it. And so psychometrists, it's really about reading the memory.
That's so cool. I didn't realize that was an actual thing. I was like, wow, Gwendolyn came up with this whole new science thing.
I can make it up.
Cool. No, I Googled psychometry right when I started reading it, and I saw all these articles and books and stuff about it, and I was like, oh man, this is research rabbit hole right here.
Yeah.
And you did not share that with me?
I thought you knew.
I didn't, obviously. Apparently I don't know everything. Just most things, just not everything.
But at a certain point, I started taking notes There was one day right after, it was my birthday / I graduated with my master's degree. So to celebrate, I got myself, thank you, a ticket to go see Hamilton. So I went by myself. I left the kids and the husband at home. I took the train down. It was amazing. But I had a couple hours to kill, so I took my journal and the time collector with me, and I started reading at a cafe, and I started taking notes. And I found it very interesting that the smallest measure of time, my handwriting is atrocious, I'm trying to read this, it's picoseconds. What was the smallest?
It could have changed by now. I mean, I literally got that from a time manual, like, like an actual measurement thing. It could even have shrunk. The whole point is that, milliseconds, nanoseconds, it's all shrinking, and the ability to measure those increments is getting just smaller and smaller, to where what does it even mean anymore? And it's like, we grew up with the second, and then I think the most times we have an awareness of it is, say, at the Olympics, when we're watching the swimming or something like that, where it's like, oh, it's it's just so close. It's not even a second anymore. It's 100th of a second. And it's like, you can just keep on taking that to whatever, scientists are just, their increments are getting smaller and smaller. And I loved writing the whole time room scene, because that's really a summary of time, and where, the evolution of time, how our sense of time is evolving with us and our experience, and everything's speeding up. And what does that mean, with just even being alive and experiencing time in the first place, and then you have physics saying, oh, well, there is no even past, present, or future anyway. And, you guys need to catch up with that idea, so it's like, there's all this stuff going on that's really fascinating to me. And, so for Rowan, being a psychometrist, where he's really struggled with time because it's ruled his life, I loved writing that one scene where he just really got to talk about it with Millicent. And that was their date. That was their stroll through the clocks instead of a park, and I loved that idea of it, together. So.
And this is why we need to have you on more, because it keeps Michelle really occupied. Or she's reading the book and she's taking notes. I mean, somebody's got to keep her out of trouble.
Well, I mean, it really kind of makes you feel like you should be a lot more productive in a day. If you can get down to a quintillionth of a second, like, how much time am I actually wasting during the day? If you can, I mean, what is even a quintillion? I don't know.
I know, right?
It's a little mind-blowing when you start thinking about it.
Yes.
Imagine all the books we could read and write if we were only productive.
Exactly, yeah.
I don't
Forget
think we'll
laundry.
be that productive.
So one of the key things about the story is location.
Yeah.
New Orleans was so pivotal to the story. Did you set out wanting to put the story in New Orleans? Did that just come with it, or is it?
Yeah, it did. When I first thought of Rowan, and I just thought, where's he from? Where did he grow up? And in New Orleans immediately. I had been there as a kid for a family vacation. My mom actually collected antiques, like old antiques, and liked to restore them. That was her hobby. So I spent a long time in childhood just wandering flea markets and old antique stores, and to actually talking about this book and remembering that, I'm like, oh yeah, maybe that actually
I was just thinking that. I'm like, okay, so this is how our childhood helps develop.
Yeah, I mean, that literally, when I was conceiving the story, none of that was even in my mind, but having to talk about it, I'm like, yeah, I did actually take a trip to New Orleans, and I did, go through all these antique stores. But so yes, I knew New Orleans right away. I had been there for my friend's wedding several years ago, and had just a wonderful time going in and out of all of the stores in the French Quarter. And I just thought, that what a great place for a psychometrist to have grown up. And then I went back and researched it, and got Rowan's you know, his story just started really coming together in my head. So I did not even question that city. Yeah.
It definitely is a great story for it. I mean, or setting for the story, just because it's, you know, there's, like you said, there's so much to it, so much history,
Right.
just so much. I can't wait. I'm going in September. Cannot wait to go. So excited.
It's such a great place.
It is. It'll be the second time I've gone, because I went in 2005, 2006, the French Quarter, and it was just such a beautiful place. And I'm like, it's what we don't go to multiple places all the time. My husband's one of those people where he's like, okay, if I've been there, there's other places in the world I need to go see. Right. But I talked him into New Orleans for research. You know, you gotta help me, babe. It's research.
There's a
gotta
reason.
go.
Exactly.
Yes. So
pull the research card. Yep.
Yep. And so he was like, oh, all right, I'll go. You know, gosh darn it. But it's such a great book for it, and such a great location for it.
Thanks. Yeah.
We're actually coming up on, I just Googled how far it is. My husband's coming up on orders pretty soon. He's in the Navy, so trying to find out where we're getting stationed at. And no, to answer your question from like 7 hours ago, Diana,
I keep asking
we have not gotten our orders yet. But it's kind of, well, we're hoping it's a toss-up between Virginia and Florida. And the Florida Naval Station is an 8-hour drive to New Orleans. That is totally doable.
Oh, girl, let me tell you about driving 8 hours into New Orleans, because I did that when we were stationed in Texas. I don't recommend it.
I mean, I drive 13 hours from Chicago to North Carolina. So 8 hours is like...
The bridges in New Orleans. Have you seen, Gwendolyn, have you seen the bridges in New Orleans?
Yeah.
The bridges, I mean, you're driving along tops of trees. And this is, seriously, people, tops of trees. And there was one point, so we were driving, and my husband, at the time, we drove from Texas to New Orleans, because we thought, again, 8 hours. It's like driving from LA to San Francisco. We could totally do it. We're driving, my husband's sound asleep, and I think it's the bridge over Lake Charles that goes straight up. I am not exaggerating. You are vertical, and I am in a 1997 Mustang, and my husband's asleep in the passenger seat next to me, and I'm driving, and I've got some dude tailgating me, and I'm pressed all the way back in the seat, praying that the car makes it up to the top.
Okay, so I'll make him drive, basically, is what I'm hearing.
Basically, yeah, there you go. And it was like, okay, never again. We're not driving to New Orleans again.
Well, okay, so I'll make him drive. Or I'll drive up until, maybe I'm looking at the map, maybe like Mobile, Alabama, and then we'll switch, because then it gets a little watery at that point.
Yeah, it gets a little watery, for sure.
So, and now, okay, we're not totally going to talk about spoilers, but we're going to get a little spoiler-ish. So if people haven't finished the book, put us on pause, finish it, and come back. And give you guys a second to find the pause
We're not
button.
responsible for any spoilers that you may hear. Do not call us. Do not email us.
We kind of
do
went
not
into
sue us.
spoiler territory a little bit before.
Oh, we did. A little bit.
We kind of did.
Yeah.
Diana, put a spoiler thing when you edit.
Yes, I will. I absolutely will. I always do whenever we have the authors on, just because.
But when we both finished the book, we did our post-reading analysis text conversation, which we always do. And we're talking about the ending, and we've noticed that you have a tendency to leave endings rather open-ended.
You know, it's so funny because I don't feel like I do it. I feel like everything is all wrapped up, but the idea that life continues, you know, so it's like I want to leave the readers the sense that things are going to just keep on going, but there's no more questions to solve. You know what I mean? Like, okay, yes, a little bit on the memory painter, but not really. I mean, and not on the fortune. I mean, you know, so it's like nothing's a cliffhanger. Nothing's ever a cliffhanger. To me, I really like tie it up, and then I do get my readers like, okay, when's the sequel? And I'm like, well, We don't have one. It is a standalone, so.
See, and this was one time, because Diana, she's a fan of the open-ended endings.
Mhm.
I like my endings. Not to say that I didn't like
endings. I like them knotted. I do, and to me, all my endings are knotted.
I found this one to be a nice knotted ending, and she's like, "Oh my god, what happened to Stuart? Where's the sequel? I gotta know what happened to Stuart."
You can't answer that question of what happened to Stuart. It's whatever. I mean, it's really what we're all going to each imagine what happened to Stuart. So it's like, for me, it's better to let the reader decide and imagine what happened to Stuart than to actually say what happened to Stuart. Like, I could come up with 3 different things that happened to Stuart, and I don't even know. It's like, we don't know what happened to Stuart. He went into a wormhole. It's like,
poor guy.
Yeah. See, Michelle, it's the lady and the tiger.
No, and please don't take that to mean that I didn't like the ending, because I love the ending.
I hear you. I hear what you're saying.
Because I say that sometimes, and authors are like, "Oh, like, no, that doesn't mean that I don't like the way that it ended."
I'm just fangirling over the ending. That's all it is. It's just fangirling.
I just have questions.
I do too.
I think when we had Stuart on,
yes,
from the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, that ending was very open-ended, very. And you're muted, just FYI, Diana. I know, I got you. But that was one interview where I was like, no, but I have questions. Like, how can you leave it that open-ended?
And he was like, I thought you guys liked the book.
Like, I loved it. It was amazing.
I loved it. And I love those endings. I love I mentioned The Lady and the Tiger, a short story, all the time, because that was one of my favorite short stories. Because you don't know what the guy's going to choose at the end of the story. He's faced with this dilemma, and that's up to the reader to decide what happens. You let the reader's imagination take control from that point on.
Right.
You don't think for them; you push them to think for themselves.
I do enough thinking in the day.
Well, this is
I don't need to figure it out myself.
Well, Michelle, this is to get you to stop thinking about poisoning your family with tick spray.
Taken out of context, that sounds really bad.
Well, that's why I said it towards the end of the episode versus in the beginning. Nobody's going to call child services on you. Do not worry about that.
I was just worried that it would get absorbed through their feet, so I carried them through the house. I would
totally do the same thing. I would carry my kid over the carpet too. I would.
It turned into a game for them. I mean, they were like, "Mom, are you going to carry me now?" I'm like, "All right, don't get used to this. This is not going to be a thing."
Are we going to play the carpet's hot lava? The most epic game of hot lava ever?
No. As long as But I think we're good. We're safe. But it's been a very long day, you guys.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can tell. I think I've got physical evidence about how much I love my book. Did you see my post, Gwendolyn?
I did on Instagram that it fell apart in the pool. Something.
Yeah. Yours is not the first casualty so far. This summer season. I'm reading Chanel Clayton's When We Left Cuba, and I thought I saved it. Apparently I did not. And it is quite water damaged as well. But not as bad as yours, because I blame my dog, the one that made the appearance a few minutes ago.
We'll send you a new one.
No, I love this one because it's like war wounds, because that's when you know that somebody loves the book, that they haven't really worn out. That I feel like that's like, it's a treasured book. It's better than the new pristine book. You can tell somebody loved it. I love this one to death. It's now one of my most treasured books.
And my book, actually, once I finished it, my next door neighbor was reading The Fortune Teller, And I said, oh, okay, so you finish that book because we're having the author back on this month and we're doing the Time Collector. So she has my Time Collector book right now.
Oh, that's great.
But she's like, oh my gosh, Rowan is just so dreamy. We know.
Now, did you intend on Rowan to be dreamy, or is he based on somebody?
No,
is he based on your
I
husband?
think he just kind of came out that way. I mean, yeah, he's a pretty cool guy. He's so sensitive, and he's not trying to be anything. He's just trying to help. And I think that's the thing, is the more you find out about Rowan, it's like he wears all black to hide the fact he's wearing gloves. It's not to be cool. You know what I mean? It's just to hide the fact he's got gloves on his hands. And so, he starts out as this kind of, Millicent thinks he might be an actor or a musician when he comes into the shop. She's in LA, so she's automatically stereotyping people. And so she's like, but and so she's judging him on certain things, but it's like, he's not anywhere near that. It's like the all black is to hide the gloves. And he's actually just this, super sensitive guy who happens to be an amazing rock climber, an amazing person. Yeah,
who just happens to be awesome.
Yeah, he happens to be pretty awesome.
Yeah. One of the things I love about him is that he doesn't have that toxic male syndrome, where you have sometimes when authors will write these really great main character, guy characters, and they get to this point where they want to be so protective of the person that they end up kind of suffocating the female character. I feel like he walked a really fine line, and he walked the line really well, where he was protective because he knew the world better.
Right. And that was a fine line. Yeah, you didn't want him to be the hero who saves the day, because Millicent needs to hold her own and come into her own. And in fact, she saves him. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a real 50-50 with them, and how to really pull that off, where it's like, he is the master psychometrist. He's had this gift like fully developed since he's 5. And so he has been through every pitfall imaginable with that. And whereas she's just starting out. And so, it was tricky writing that love story, but I did enjoy doing it. And, and definitely, he's not the macho dude who comes in and saves the girl at all. That's not who he is. And that's why I love the dynamic between he and his mom so much too. It's like, he's just his own person. And, I tend to actually write, at least people have told me this, that my male characters tend to be very feminine in a lot of ways, in a way that not feminine. I don't know how to say this, but it's like, I don't know. I've had some people tell me where it's like the guy's actually a little bit more like the girl, and the girl's a little like the guy. And
one of the things, when you have people rail on the damsel in distress trope, the thing that they seem to forget about is that the flip side of a damsel in distress trope is that you put all the pressure on the guy to do all the saving, to do all the work, and the girl just sits there and does nothing. There's no 50-50 in that partnership. And I think it's, and I wouldn't necessarily classify them as girls, but more of a reflection of how we're seeing modern masculinity.
Yeah, I think it's just an evolution of everything. And even, how people are, it's all about, it does fall into like classification and, assumptions and, the role playing of it all. And I think, we are just breaking down all those kind of old timey gender walls and, and obviously that we want to see that in fiction. We want to see our characters just be well-rounded and not falling back into that old, those old pockets of you have to be this and you in order to be a man or in order to be a woman. And, that's all, we've all called BS on that a long time ago. So it's like, yeah.
Exactly. And I think at various points in the book, I mean, they save each other.
Right.
You have that partnership.
Right.
And that's even evident, not just with Millicent and Rowan, but other characters like Son
And the brother.
And
Her
the
Millicent's
brother,
which we didn't even get to talk about him. I love his character, and I loved how you put the emotion into him. And you know, this different way of looking at grief, because I mean, so much, even, you know, we've kind of danced around the subject of it, where even though we're looking at memories of things and objects and the really cool history stuff, a lot of this book deals with grief. We've got four really different characters, because if we're also looking at Sun, you know, she had to deal with grief too, and how she worked it in her life.
Right. Well, what I was also trying to get at is the facades and what we put out into the world, and like what actually is hidden underneath, because it's like Rowan judged Sun, and then he touched the fan, and he went back to her life in Korea, and he saw. And it's like even the master psychometrist who reads the memories, realized how much he misread her. And it's like the same with the brother. It's like the brother was holding so much, and Millicent had this whole wrong idea of what he was doing and what the wrong path he had gone down. And just by touching the bracelet, Rowan got to the truth. And it's like, what is the truth? And the objects hold that truth. You know, it's the objective truth, and the facades we put up, you can go past it. And so it was like that idea of, you know, everything is not as we think it to be. You know, we all judge and we all assume, and it's not really the truth. You know, so that was an idea I had on how these objects are telling an objective truth that we don't know, because we just look at the face of things. So
absolutely. And yeah, it was great. It was really well done. I enjoyed that, having that theme within the story itself.
Right.
Michelle,
sorry, I was reading through.
We're all looking to Michelle.
Hi guys.
I try not to hog the whole podcast. I swear.
No, I don't think you have been at all. I have really atrocious handwriting when I'm writing fast, and
I did usually too. I'm like, what was this note? I have no idea what I'm trying to.
Exactly. Usually I can figure it out, and not tonight. But what you were talking, we were just talking about, you know, grief and the role that it plays in people's lives, but also the way that it shifts people, you know, the trajectory of people's lives. Like, you know, Millicent had a completely different life when she first started, and you know, and now all of a sudden she's taking care of her brother, and she's struggling to find, you know, find a way to keep her mother's house, and her mother's house. I mean, her, oh my gosh, the words flew out of my head. Psychometry. At first, it was really a way for her to process her grief, because she just went around touching,
her mother's things,
her mother's things, but I thought that was such a sweet moment. Like, you know, how, and I just started thinking about my mom, like, if I could do that, like, go, I mean, she's not, you know, she's still here, thank God, knock on wood, but, you know, like, that would be such a nice way to hold on to someone until you're ready, you know. She wasn't ready to let her go. I thought that was a really nice scene for her to go through.
Thanks, yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, no, I loved writing that scene. And, you know, the line where it's like, when she held the baby close, she knew her mother wouldn't change a thing. And that says it all. You know, that's it. That's the of touching all of her mother's things, you know, goes back to the baby clothes.
So, and now that we are nearing the hour, we're going to circle back to the pen question.
Oh my gosh.
She thought she got away from it.
No.
Escape the pen question.
Michelle never forgets.
Well, I have it written down, like right there. So.
Oh, I'll say J.K. Rowling, because I love her so much. So.
Oh, that would be a good one.
Yeah. Writing Harry Potter.
I've been on a American Revolution kick with Hamilton and everything, and I thought I would want George Washington's pen.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
That would be a good one.
That'd be a really good one. I mean, if I were to go back in history, I was just thinking like people alive, but yeah, that's a whole other question. Like alive.
Yeah, you know who else would be good would be Mary Shelley.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. I just thought of that one. I was like, oh, that would be really good.
You know, I'll go with George Washington with you. I would love to hold his pen.
Right?
Yes, definitely. I would love to hold his pen.
I mean, Hamilton would be interesting too, but the economics, finances, math, geometry, not my field at all. So I feel like a lot of his stuff would fly over my head.
But the Federalist Papers.
Yes. But I'll stick with the first president of the United States.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
That's a good one.
Okay, that works.
Or
It's
Alfred
very
Baum.
patriotic. Ooh, that's a good one.
So I can nerd out on his writing process. Because how amazing would it be to get to your favorite author and pick their brain in a way that you could never do just in a conversation.
Well, you wouldn't. Yeah, you'd be seeing their process firsthand, theoretically, unless you get a memory that you really don't want to see, because that's always a risk with that.
Yeah.
We had a conversation about that in like our first episode. It got weird.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what we do. We get weird so fast.
I did not mean it to go in the direction that it went, but once it started, I could not stop it.
It was like a beautiful train wreck.
It was so bad.
And we won't embarrass Michelle any further with that
No,
one.
Okay.
But thank you so much for joining us. We're
Thanks
at
for
our
having
hour.
me, really. Thank you.
It's such a pleasure having you. And then, you guys, if you've stuck around with us and you haven't read The Time Collector, do so. Or if you have read The Time Collector, go pick up either The Memory Painter and or The Fortune Teller. You know, might as well just pick up both while you're there.
Right, just
at
get
the
all
bookstore. You know, have the trilogy. I mean, they're not really technically a trilogy, but you want the series. We're going to just call it a series. Yeah, exactly. And then, guys, our book of the month for July is The Favorite Daughter. We've got a nice suspense book for the summer. Very designed for the summer with this cool cover. And then we'll have Kara Ruda on the show at the end of the month. So thank you, Gwendolyn, so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
This was lovely.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you guys will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.